I have the written down proof on the Book of Face about how dense men can be. I'm not being a feminist, but like purity culture men. Like, isn't not all men. I feel like I'm digging myself in a hole. I'm not a feminist, y'all. You should know that by now. But this conversation that I had online, I'm part of a group. Somebody posted a picture, a screenshot of Matt Walsh, who we don't have time to dive into that, but I think he's just a celebrity at this point and doing what people want to hear. Matt Walsh had written, if you're a woman and you don't want men to notice you in the gym, maybe wear more than just your underwear. Okay. Let's define what wearing underwear is, because I know a lot of people who think that just wearing yoga pants with an oversized t-shirt is a problem because God forbid you see the curves. We've talked about this before. I won't go back into it. And then, so somebody posted that, but the screenshot includes the first comment under Matt Walsh's comment. And that comment says, and I agree. But this was what was supposed to be made fun of as the atheist who comes to attack Christian beliefs. But I agree with the atheist. The comment says, or men could just gouge their eyes out as Jesus recommended. Yes, child. Yes. Some people get it. This gentleman here had commented under that photo and said, why is accountability a purely male trait? I get it. Another guy was like, this is a false dichotomy. Men should keep their lusts in check. And all that. I commented, I said, Matt Walsh is off the mark. Yes, the women should not be dressing like they're at a strip club when they go to the gym. And P.S., I did not define that. Most women just don't. But if you want to entertain that as a category of women going to the gym, fine. Like, you get those stragglers that are trying to get... You'll get the stragglers doing it. But for the most part, they're just trying to work out. And they're wearing something that allows them to move better without their extra fat places being strained by gravity, by the jostling of the movements required in the exercise. Like, wearing the spandex is not just about, if we're jogging for an hour on the treadmill wearing sweatpants, some girls choose to do it, but for most of us, doing so causes tears, especially the breast. It's not healthy. It ruins the body God gave us. We don't live on farms anymore, where activity is just a natural way of life to the extent, like, to the strenuous level that working on the treadmill. It used to be, but now we've got gyms, okay? So I'm not going to the gym unless I've got my spandex. I'm not a slut. I usually actually wear an oversized shirt over, the tight one. But then it's sweaty, there's sacrifices. But I digress. I just said, look, yeah, they shouldn't be dressing like a strip club, but that doesn't have anything to do with what the guy does. Like, I tried to explain that a man controlling his lust has nothing to do with what the girl wears, and what the girl wears should not be driven by whether a man will look at her a certain way. It should be driven about her relationship with God and how she's portraying herself as a child of God, not whether or not a guy is going to look. So I wrote, look, Muslim women get attacked while wearing potato sacks. Sin makes men look, lust, and attack, not the wardrobe. I said, what wardrobe does is display what kind of woman she is. I wrote, separate the categories here. And then I wrote, I will not disrespect men so much as to say they were created to sin, which is what the entire if you don't want them to look, don't wear it argument hinges on. It's true. Then I write, there are a million biblical reasons not to wear slutty clothes. A man looking should not be one of them. And if we can't think of any other reason to dress well other than because a man might be too heterosexual about it, we haven't a clue what it means to have bodies as temples. Also, because saying stuff about guys looking or not makes it seem like if a girl is okay with guys looking, then her wardrobe's fine, which it isn't. And that's true. Like, if a girl's okay with a guy ogling her, that doesn't make what she wears fine. Because Matt Walsh was like, well, if you don't want men to look at you. But that shouldn't be the driving force. Then I end by saying, let's stop making provocativeness a sin against men and make it a sin against God. Why would anyone get upset with this? But lo and behold, the men that come out of the woodwork. Monsieur David says, his point is that we can't control men. He already started. We can't control it. They have to lust. They have to. Anyway, he says, his point is we can't control men, but you can control what you wear, which is already the false premise. Then he says, you can offer whatever excuse you want, but you can work out just fine without needing to be almost completely naked. The dichotomies here. You can't control you can't control yourself. The lust, what did I say earlier? The lust is in your created order, and it must be protected at all costs. I answer, as I said, I agree that women should not wear that stuff. That wasn't remotely my argument. And I'm saying that stuff, though. Like, I don't agree that they shouldn't wear spandex, but I agree that, like, in the ether, the random, whatever, non-defined category, they shouldn't dress like sluts. But I think our idea of what sluts is quite different. But I wrote, I agree that women should not wear that stuff. That wasn't remotely my argument. My argument is that the reason, emphasized with asterisks, the reason women shouldn't wear that stuff has zero to do with men looking because, one, it's a woman's sin before God, not man, and two, because it shouldn't matter what a woman wears, a man still has a responsibility not to look. A woman is not responsible for his own lust. That's like saying the candy bar sinned because a chocolate lover stole it. It's two separate sins. What is wrong with that? How do people get upset? The idea that I'm like, women and men have different sins to deal with. I'm not saying that it's all the man's fault. I'm literally not. But they can't let it go because these men want to protect their lust as a God-given creation. Monsieur Matthew says, modesty is absolutely about not trying to tempt people to sin. No, it's not. He goes, the man is responsible to not engage in lust, but women are accountable for their actions, just like it's up to an alcoholic to not drink, but you shouldn't be chugging beer in front of them and to go on about how great it is to get buzzed. No. I say, no, Scripture does not link being modest to how men look at women. And it doesn't. Scour the internet Scripture. Scour the Scriptures. Modesty is talking about the only place, well, first of all, the only place it's talking about is probably not even talking about covering up your body, but let's pretend it is. It has nothing to do with the men. It's talking about how to reflect God in your actions. That's the context. So I said, Scripture does not link being modest to how men look at women. It links it to adorning temples for Christ. And men looking at women isn't caveated by, well, I know it's harder when they wear bad stuff, but still trying your darndest. Like, I wrote, they're separate things. Purity culture disconnected them. And I wrote further, and the alcohol analogy doesn't work because the connection between a weaker brother and meat, drink, is explicitly already made in the Bible. Again, there's no connection made in the Bible about the modesty thing. And that's on purpose because otherwise, as we have seen in all the purity culture longevity studies of good women having the equivalent psychological and biological responses to being told their bodies are the problem as rape and assault victims, plus a generation of men who are afraid to be attracted to their spouse, connecting a man's lust problem to a woman's immodesty problem damages heterosexuality. Mr. Matthew says, the idea that it's okay to intentionally be a stumbling block for lust is absurd. Where did I say that? Where did I say? What? Matthew, baby. And he goes, the reaction against purity culture is to justify sin on the behalf of women with zero accountability by putting everything on the male brethren. Oh, tell me you were a purity culture bumpkin without telling me. Because you reacting against purity culture? That means you're a liberal feminist. Then he quotes the scripture that says, and behold, the woman meets him dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stray at home. Now in the street, now in the market, at every corner. What? I answered, dude, of course it's wrong to prostitute, but prostitution doesn't cause lust. That's my point here. And I say, by now I have said ad nauseum that immodesty in women is a sin. I'm making that crystal clear again because people are intentionally glossing over it. Please stop twisting my words. And then I say, you need to do some purity culture research. Purity wasn't and isn't the problem. Making your entire worth hinge upon purity is. Have you been raised in purity culture? And even if you were, you're not a woman. I suggest doing some research before making assumptions like the reaction to purity culture is just from liberal nuts. There's an entire world out there of women who are still faithful conservative Christians who have been irreversibly damaged by the lies that purity culture taught them about being sinful for having female anatomy and solely responsible for men's lust. Start with reading The Fruit of Her Hands by Nancy Wilson, and with so much more by the Botkin sisters. I'll give you an entire laundry list more resources if you want. There's a PCA podcast by Presby Chicks, who did an amazing episode on the damage of the culture also. Not purity culture. The culture centers on male lust being an ivory tower. I continue and say, the irony of saying that women try to blame everything on the men. Not only do men want all the responsibility in every other aspect of life when it comes to their headship in the home or whatever, suddenly they don't want to take full responsibility for their own eyes. But it's frustrating to hear that men cannot control their lust when women are expected to control their lust for wearing immodest clothes. Men and women have the same responsibility regardless of what temptations they see or hear. Then I say, the verse you quoted is still not representative. A girl dressed badly at the gym isn't trying to hump a guy in an alleyway. Like, the fact he made that equivalent. I continue. The fact you made the connection is telling. Are men unable to differentiate an immodest woman from a prostitute? Or are men so driven by what's between the legs that they think every immodest woman is trying to have sex with them? And then I end with, read the first paragraph in this comment again, in case it is still not clear that I think immodesty is wrong. Then, oh my gosh. Then I say, because Monsieur David at the top there, he said that when he said we can't control men, I missed the fact the first time I read it that David had said we can't control men. So then I commented and I said, really, you want to argue that men's lust is an untouchable ivory tower? And I say to him, men can absolutely control themselves. This is not to excuse what the woman does. She should not wear immodest clothes for many God-centered, not man-centered reasons. But the men can't help it stuff is so demonstrative to my point of the damage done to women who became emotionally crippled, thinking they had the power to send their brothers to hell. So David hops back on the bandwagon. He says, you're the one who leapt from don't be a stumbling block by dressing immodestly to ranting about purity culture. Now, that's because he thinks it's separate. It's not. He says, the entirety of Proverbs 7 is about a man being told to avoid the adulteress and describes her many actions to try to seduce men. Acting like the options are purity culture or pretending that women don't have responsibility for how they act and dress impacting others around them is silly. I can't even. I say, dude, I made the leap because it isn't a leap. Purity culture is directly linked to what women wear, what they say, what they do, as tied to worth and genitalia. I am not exaggerating or making this up. The whole men can't help it, immodest women make men lust comes from purity culture. It is a culture. It is a way of life. If you are ignorant about this, consider yourself blessed. I don't think he's ignorant. I think he's right there, hook, line, and sinker, but whatever. I continue. I am addressing the points being made. The original point being made was that women should not dress immodestly at the gym so as not to cause the men to stumble. I challenged the premise that immodest clothes cause men to stumble and argued that lust makes men stumble, and I used the fact that women who are modest are not free of lustful eyes or attacking criminals. I continue. I also said that yes, women do have a responsibility to dress well, but not because it causes men to lust. They have a responsibility to dress well because it is a direct reflection of their God. Immodesty is vain and prideful and does not reflect prudence. Men will lust if they want to, no matter what the women wear. So the clothes should not be chosen based on that. That is my argument and very relevant. I continue. I agree with your assessment of Proverbs 7. I do not agree that an immodest woman at the gym remotely is Proverbs 7. You have to explain why you think a woman wearing a crop top and yoga shorts at a cycling class is the same as jumping a guy in an alleyway. That really doesn't fly apart from a man's lust being so out of control that he needs it to be the same. And then he gives me a freaking effing book. He quotes the quote that I said, I challenged the premise that immodest clothes cause men to stumble and argued that lust makes men stumble. He said, this was the kicker. He says, this is utterly incoherent. The sin cannot cause itself. Yes, it does. Sin causes itself because psychology and scripture, it's in our members. It is in our being. Sin breeds itself. What are you saying? It's Lockean? Sin doesn't cause itself? Sin is only bred because of external nurture environment forces? That's not even Christianity. He continues, to deny that intentionally trying to appear more sexualized in dress and behavior is not going to increase lustful attention is absurd. No, it's not. Because you can look away, dumbass. You can look away. It's not going to increase anything. There's motivations on her part that are evil. But if he's willing, he's willing. He'll go after a girl in sweats. These guys should go to that museum where the women's clothes when they got raped are all on display. Very few of them have anything revealing. Anyway. Then he says, you would logically thus be denying that a woman could even attempt to seduce a man at all. No. They can be seduced because they have lust, and the lust is looking for an excuse to indulge. It's not like magic where like, oh no, she has breasts. I must eat them. It's like, what? Then he quotes when I say, I do not agree that an immodest woman at the gym remotely is Proverbs 7. And he says, your insistence on ignoring the gradations of life so as to avoid accountability for women's sexual sin is tiresome. Oh my gosh. Then, like, gradations. So it's soft porn. It's soft. But the guy could still shut the internet off about porn. Like, is he going to blame women for being on porn? I mean, yeah, women shouldn't be doing porn. But, like, is he going to blame the woman for causing him to look at porn when he could turn the computer off? Then he ends with my quote that when I say a man's lust is so out of control, like, is a man's lust so out of control that he can't, like, help himself? And he says, he gives, like, a little sarcastic quote, and he says, I am not literally jumping you, so you should just resist. Yes! Yes, dude, you finally got it, but you're acting sarcastic here. So my last comment, and finally the guy just stops because, he's an idiot. That's when I wrote. I said, oh my gosh, the sin absolutely causes itself. Now you're propagating the Lockean blank slate theory that only external facts cause sin. External factors. Sin begins in the heart from humankind. Sin is literally in us, not outside of us. The rest of your comment is going in circles. I cannot have a coherent conversation with someone who either chronically takes everything I say out of context or is not arguing from a biblical framework to begin with. Your last quote proves the futility of this because, yes, you should just resist. Because when he wrote the whole, I'm not literally jumping you, so you should resist. So I said, yes, you should literally just resist. And honestly, even if you were being jumped, that is your problem, and she has her own problem. Her problem did not cause yours, according to the Christian worldview, so yeah, we are done here. Oh my gosh, but like you'd believe, like they literally think that it's like men cannot be touched. So then another one, like a different thread, this other guy says, why is accountability a purely male trait? And I agree. I said, yes, exactly. Because apparently men can't help it. I wrote, purity culture equated attractions with lust and ruined generations of Christians in the path. Noticing a woman's curvaceousness isn't the problem. That's literally just heterosexuality. Wanting to take those curves home and sleep with her is the lust. And you absolutely can tell between whether a woman is wearing something at the gym out of pride and vanity versus practicality. Keep your eyes on the barbell. So this Johnny Boy guy says, totally avoided the question and deflected the responsibility and accountability back to the man. You're straw-manning his question. It's answers like yours that are the reason that good men are completely avoiding modern Western women. What? I said? What? I didn't avoid the question. He said, why is accountability a purely male trait? And I said, because he can't help his lust. So you shouldn't put accountability on him for it. I said to this guy, I was like, everything you just said is based in a stereotype someone told you. He says, you didn't answer his question, which I did, but... So now you're a liar. You straw-manned his question. You answered a question that was never asked and still managed to blame everything on men. That is the avoidance and deflection. I feel like I'm talking to Trump. You can't answer his question because you don't want to be held accountable or responsible. You throw platitudes and dance all over the place around his question. But you never answer the question directly and place blame squarely where it belongs. Put on your big boy britches and explain why it is that it's only men who are held accountable for everything. What are you talking about? I literally didn't even say that. I was like, dude. I said to continue the chat on the other page, though, like the other thread. And then I said, where I clearly ad nauseum say that in every possible semantic that women are accountable for their actions. The issue here is that you're trying to have women also held accountable for a man's actions. Men are responsible for their lust. Women are responsible for their wardrobe. How is that triggering to you? And he reacts, and doesn't answer. Like, it's because men want their lust to be an untouchable ivory tower we must roll out the red carpet for because lust is a God-given trait. They don't know how to separate attraction from lust. Like Matt Walsh saying, if you don't want men to look at you, don't wear slutty clothes. You're assuming that women always wear slutty clothes at the gym because you're afraid to notice her nice ass. Like, I've already talked about this. Don't ogle. Do you not know the difference between ogling and looking? I'm not going to encourage you to look, like, especially if you have a lust problem. But I'm just saying, like, it's not a problem to think a girl's pretty because of her particular feminine nature, like her feminine looks. These guys are so whipped. The Lockeanism thing just, like, threw me. Like, I've honestly, I shouldn't be surprised, but I've not heard it so blatantly done that. And it goes right with the psychology stuff. It's a Lockeanism. Suddenly it's Lockeanism. Now, again, that I don't know where these guys have come from. They're probably not Recons, but it's, you know, purity culture is just everywhere. But it kind of just pulled it all together as far as the inconsistency or the cognitive dissonance between Recons who are all about, you know, human nature and, you know, sin and da-da-da. And then at the same time, they blame so many things on external factors when it's convenient. Oh, it's the girl's wardrobe that made me do it. Oh, it's the fact that, you know, your actions, like external actions, like cause these mental failures, which, okay, you know, like each case is different, but the fact that you automatically assume that as opposed to, no, it's an internal sin, not spiritual all the time, but like a Adam fall sin nature over creation problem. Like, you're not born pure. You're not born without a bunch of ailments as a result of sin. Like, you're going to die when you're born. Did you forget that part? That's all automatically, like, that's internal sin, even apart from actions and philosophies and all that. There's just so much inconsistency with how they approach things, and you get really, really messed up, and you don't know exactly how to handle it because you're afraid of everything around you. Because everything has the potential to make you go to hell around you, externally. You're afraid to make your own decisions. Like, I don't know, go to school. You're afraid to head on meet anything that might challenge you. Like a psychology course, maybe. But that's all I got time for because now I gotta go edit all of this. I hope that it was informative and enjoyable and all that jazz. I hope I was the thespian that you needed, not necessarily that you wanted, but I will see you all next time.